that line between genius and madness is very fluid. You can sort of introduce alternative facts, as they say, and people believe them. Stoicism is not a formula for you to be a better sociopath.
This is Gavin Newsom.
And this is Ryan Holiday.
Ryan, thanks for being here, man.
Of course.
Sacramento, California. You know this area well, don't you?
Not this area, because I think people don't understand that Sacramento is a bit like Los Angeles, where to people who don't live there, it's one place.
Yeah, good point.
But if you live there, it's a bunch of other, like, I probably came downtown like 10 times in my life.
Interesting.
Until later, because I lived in the suburbs of Sacramento. I mean,
so this was a big city, Sacramento, back when you were young.
But it's like, this is the town we would pass on the way to Arco Arena.
To watch the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, or we would go down here to see Sutter's Fort or the Railroad Museum as a kid, but you wouldn't actually do Sacramento, one, because it wasn't, I mean, it's done so much amazing works or bring it back to life, but also like California is like these self-contained suburbs, and you live in your suburb.
But you must have, when you were a kid, you must have gone to the Capitol, right?
Yeah,
you have to,
sure.
Part of the obligation of childhood here in California. Everyone does a fourth grade. They do a little tour.
Yeah.
How about the governor's mansion where we are right now?
I've never been here.
Interesting.
I don't even think I've seen it.
You've never seen it?
I don't know.
You haven't even driven by?
What?
Ronald Reagan's old.
Here's when I would have seen it. They made you do your driver's test or your driver's training in downtown because it was the only place that would have like four-way stops.
Right.
Anyways, I remember driving downtown to get my driver's license.
That's it. But you're a Fair Oaks kid, Fair Oaks, California, the suburb here.
Yeah, I was born in Gold River.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Fair Oaks, and I was there till high school.
Till high school, and then you went what? You went down south. You went to
Sure. No, I went to Granite Bay High School.
So you're Granite Bay High School.
Yes.
Yes. And you were excellent student. Were you that kid that was always raising your hand, or were you in the back? Give me your profile.
Well, my parents wanted me to go to Jesuit, and I didn't go to Jesuit, so I was not that student. No, I think I was like hit or miss. Sometimes it was a fit, and when it was a fit, it was good, and then a lot of times it wasn't. It wasn't until I went to college that anything really started to happen for me.
But in high school, were you you must have had some, it wouldn't be a vision board, but you must have had some vision of your future. What was it? What were you thinking you'd become?
Oh, I wanted to be in a heavy metal band.
So that was it.
Yeah.
You were certain about that.
Yes. I loved music, but I've said this before, but like, I don't think Sacramento is a lovely place, but it was not then much the territory of entrepreneurs or artists, or like, I don't know if I ever met anyone growing up who didn't have a job. Like just a regular job. Like teachers, doctors, civil servants.
Love that.
Real estate agents. It was just very conventional, right? And I think that's why people love Sacramento is that you could have a conventional life here. That version of the American dream was very accessible.
Love it.
But the idea that like I loved books, but I didn't meet anyone that wrote books. And, it wasn't like, oh, this neighbor, their kid, there wasn't any of that. So it was, I just didn't have a sense of what was possible. I mean, it wasn't until I was probably in my 20s that I even learned Joan Didion was from California. Like it wasn't a like, hey, this is a place where people who do that come from.
What were your parents doing? What kind of?
My dad was a police detective and my mom was a school principal.
I love it.
So just, like your classic sort of American job.
And a school principal, I mean, what kind of mindset did you have with a mom who's a school principal?
Well, my mom was a school principal in the San Juan School District, but she did like continuing adult education. So she did, she didn't have like kids as her students. It was,
right, got it.
It was like, plumbers going back to get their GED and stuff. It was all really interesting, but just not what I wanted to do.
And were you surrounded by books as a kid? Were your parents pushing books? Your 10th grade. Here's 3 books you need to read.
I read a lot as a kid, but I read like like Westerns and
Nice.
action. I didn't know about this thing called philosophy. I didn't know, I didn't know there was all these amazing history books. I was just, I don't know. It was a bubble in a good way.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's why you go away to college, is to expand what you're exposed to.
So you were in college, and what were you studying? What did you decide to study?
I was political science and creative writing.
In creative writing.
Yeah.
Were you always a writer?
I think I wanted to be a writer. And I remember my first seminar, we had to go down in the summer. And we had this seminar that was taught by Susan Straight, who's one of the great sort of California novelists. And they'd assigned us her book. And it was a real book, like a book you would see in a bookstore.
Right.
And I was like, oh, people do this. Like, this is a job you could have. This is a thing people do. And I think, like, we talk about like Nepo babies and stuff. And I think one of the things people don't understand about that is that a big part of what it does is it demystifies the possibility of going in certain directions. When oh, hey, like my mom's friend does that. Or, hey, I've seen my dad practice, his lines for an audition. Like I got to imagine for Steph Curry, being in an NBA arena is like, this is where my dad works.
Yeah.
So it becomes possible in a way that obviously there's the genetics and the privilege and all that. But I think a huge part of it is just like, no, this is a thing you can do because you saw other people do it, for the same reason that it was probably likely that I'd be a police officer or a school teacher because, you saw your parents do that.
Yeah, I think about, the old adage, once a mind is stretched, it never goes back to its original form, or even the more simple frame, which is probably overstated, but you can't be what you can't see. Once you see something, it's now more tangible.
And that's like they talk about this like with representation. Like if you don't see people like you on TV or in art or in the movies or on the headlines, you just don't think someone like you can do it. And representation matters, not obviously just in terms of gender or class or nationality, but also just like, hey, people like you from this small town can go. That's why towns celebrate like who came from here. That like there is a way to do that.
This is my favorite part of American Idol, when they come back home and the entire town's out there on Main Street and just so proud. Good. Their native sons. So you were out there, but meanwhile you're doing a little creative writing, but you've got a rock band on the side. What are you doing? I mean, you're sitting there driving your parents crazy in the garage.
That's exactly what I was doing. I'm sure it was horrible, and they were pretty patient, and it just didn't go anywhere, and as is to be expected. But
you lasted how many years in college? You
2.
Just 2.
2.
So what happened?
I got a chance to be a writer. I was writing for the college newspaper, which again you sort of get a chance to do a thing. Oh, it's like a job. So I was writing for the college newspaper in Riverside, and I started working for this person that I'd written about, this guy named Robert Greene, who wrote the 48 Laws of Power.
And how'd you get? I mean, Robert, a legend.
Yeah,
doesn't begin to describe him. You don't have to introduce 48 Laws of Power.
He's the GOAT. He's like one of the greatest nonfiction writers of.
So how did you even get a chance to even? I mean, you're writing about him. Did you? And that all of a sudden, then he attached this.
Yeah, and then I started doing little things for him here or there, and it kind of became this whole. He needed a research assistant, and I was like, that's. I remember thinking like, hey, if this is this was my first job out of college would be a success.
Nice.
Did
your parents agree with that?
Horror.
No, they of course didn't, right?
Yeah, because I think my entire family was horrified. They're all teachers, and also for that era, that was the thing is your kids go to college so they don't end up living under a bridge somewhere.
Yeah,
and so they did not handle it well, and it was. It's funny too, because I thought at the time it was this enormous risk, like crazy thing that I was doing, because I never done anything.
You're still a teenager at the time.
Yeah.
19 or something.
20, yeah, maybe. Yeah. But I do think we put so much pressure on kids that like, if you don't go to college between the ages of 18 and 22, it's over for you. Like you're just done. And obviously that's not really true. I could have always gone back. And I think the Silicon Valley model of dropping out to go do something actually was very helpful to me, because I could be like, oh, all these other people had done it in other ways, and it doesn't ruin your life.
And Robert was not, so you're doing research, but he's also just an outsized mentor.
Yes,
in every way, shape.
It was like in retrospect, you would call it an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people think these things are very official. Like this person, you sign a contract and then they're your mentor for the next X period. It's an informal thing that develops over time, and you learn a lot. And then also, I think people only claim the relationship if you go on to do things.
Yeah, good point.
Right? Like the mentorship is sealed by you validating the investment that they put in you. And but yeah, I learned everything I could possibly learn about how to do the thing that I wanted to do.
And you had a very definitive, intentional thing you wanted to do. I mean, writing's a construct, but there's so many different disciplines. I mean, did you start to follow his path, or were you trying to follow your own path and sort of, and all of a sudden you deviated back? What?
I knew I wanted to write about sort of history and stuff like that. And he is an interesting model because, he's not a university professor or anything like that. He just writes these books that are enormously popular and influential and have been for a really long time, kind of outside the system. Like The 48 Laws of Power is consistently one of the most shoplifted books in the country.
Wow.
It's also banned in most prisons.
Yeah, trust me, I know this. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a big issue. We were just reviewing our banned books at our California Department of Corrections.
Yeah, and like the Innocence Project will tell people like, hey, do not have this book in your cell. It will be used against you in sentencing or appeal.
Jesus. Wow.
So he's just written these really interesting books that have this sort of outsized reputation, but they're also just like meticulously crafted and really kind of transgressive in how they're laid out and organized. I just didn't know I didn't know you could do something like that. And so I wanted to do something like that. And I think if you're like a young person, you're trying to figure out what you want to do, the best thing you can do is find someone who's done something similar, like something just in the ballpark, and find some means of being in the orbit. It's like, how do you go sweep floors in their record studio? How do you stock shelves in the store? How do you drive them? How can you do anything where you're just in the orbit? And was
that something you had a concept of at the time, or over time you started to wake up to that appreciation? You started to realize, wait a second, I need to really take this in more fully, and I need to really appreciate what I'm learning and what I'm absorbing. Or is that your relationship to that, the idea, success leaves clues that you can pick up on other people's? Did that come in hindsight?
I think more in hindsight. Yeah, there's a Lyndon Johnson thing where he's like, you go to the people who are at the center of things.
Nice.
And you just need to be in proximity to power, influence, expertise. So I think I had some sense that you just want to go where the action is.
Yeah.
I think I was very just, it would be like, Robert would assign me to transcribe a bunch of interviews, and then he'd be like, bring them by the house, and and to me, that was where I was getting paid. is that I would get to go, and then he'd be, okay, so what's in here, and we'd review it, and then I'd maybe get to sneak in like one or two questions.
Nice.
And that, to me, that was how I was getting paid. I mean, he was actually very generous, and he did pay me, but I was getting paid in something that I understood was much more valuable than would show up on a pay stub or whatever, which is like, how do you get advice from the people who have done the thing.
Yep.
And that's, I think, where you want to go. It's funny because later he writes this, I think his best book, that it's probably the book that I would give most young people. He wrote this book called Mastery. And it's all about how you become great at something. And there's this whole, I think the second step is about this sort of apprenticeship. You have to, the first thing is you find the thing that you're meant to do. And when when you're lucky enough to be like, oh, this is the thing that lights me up, this is what I want to do, the next step is you find that person who has done it, and you just have to, you have to attach yourself to them. And that was that phase for a good chunk of my 20s.
Love it. How many? So you were there for how many years then with Robert?
I don't know, 19 to 26, 27.
So it was I mean,
and like these things are fluid and they overlap. You get your first shot. I wrote a book, and he was helping me with it. It's not like this one day it ends and you graduate. Right. It's this thing. I mean, I was just talking to him a couple of days ago, asking him for some advice, and so it's kind of a fluid thing. But he ended up getting me a job at this company called American Apparel, and that was kind of the next sort of part of that education.
And you were doing marketing work there. Mm-hmm. How'd that go for you, Ryan?
Well, it was interesting. It was interesting.
Some people may not know a little bit of the story. We don't have to dwell on this, but it's a hell of an interesting story.
Well, it's a sad story too. In that, if you had told me at 23 that now I would say that name and people would stare at you blankly. Yeah. It's a cautionary. I mean, I wrote a book called "Ego is the Enemy" that I wrote as the company was imploding, because I sort of had a ringside seat to this one point, the largest garment manufacturer in the Northern Hemisphere. It was this success story. It was this incredible thing. Yep. One of the coolest brands in the world, and it destroyed itself. Destroyed itself, and the genius that created it was also the demonic energy that destroyed it, and that's a very common thing where like that line between genius and madness is very fluid, and yeah, it was a surreal experience. I learned a ton, obviously, and then a lot of things that took a while to unlearn as well.
Did you? I mean, there's the old frame. You put a mask on. I think Orwell in Shooting the Elephant talked about how he put a mask on and his face grew into it. Mm-hmm. Did you see that happening to you in terms of trying to sort of defend or sort of the PR push? Sort of mask the deviancy there.
You experience. Only in looking back, especially as you get older, you go, I had no business being there. Like why was a 22-year-old running marketing at a publicly traded company? If you'd asked me at 22, I would have said, because I'm that good. and then now I go, oh, I was probably good, but I also didn't know how fucking insane any of this was. Yeah. And so I think it's helped me understand some of what's happening in the world, some of the Me Too stuff, where you're like, oh, part of the reason that everyone there was in their 20s, working for someone who was not in their 20s, was that there was a certain amount of control and a certain amount of naivete about what was happening that allowed that sort of system to go on as it did. So, I just realized like, oh, I just shouldn't have been in any of these situations. It was wildly inappropriate and insane. But I didn't know, because I'm a kid from Sacramento and this all seems very exciting and interesting. It's not striking me as insane that this, single 45-year-old multimillionaire wants me to live in his house. That seemed exciting and interesting. And thankfully, I did not live in said house. But you just don't realize what's crazy until you're out of the thing. And so I am somewhat sympathetic to people who kind of get in over their heads on stuff, because that was certainly me. I just didn't. I was just really caught up in the energy and the excitement and the sort of canvas that it was to do what I was doing, but the fact that it was all nuts, was a debriefing process. And then the funny thing is, my wife and I have been together since we met in college, and so she was there through all of it, and she was like, I was telling you every day that this is insane.
I told you so.
I'll just be in, I'll be on the middle of a run somewhere, and something will hit me, and I'll come back and I'll tell her, and she's like, I told you that like 800 times, and so that you were just, you're what's that Upton Sinclair thing about it's very hard to understand something when your salary depends on you not understanding it.
Well said.
And there was a lot of that.
There was a lot of that as well. So how long was that? It was over a 2-year period. What
oh no, I was there
short.
2007 to 2014 or 15, something like that.
So it was a huge.
It was a big chunk of my. Yeah, it was a big chunk.
And meanwhile, though, you said Ego's the Enemy. You're starting to, perfect book to sort of the genesis of that experience and understanding it. And so, was that the first, for you had written a number of things, but was that, because that sort of starts to move you in the direction that you ultimately are today? Or what did that book represent?
I did a book on media first, and then I did my first book on Stoicism, which was called The Obstacles Away. And then, Ego was sort of Ego was me kind of leaving a good chunk of that behind and watching that sort of explode. So it was in retrospect, you look back, I'm sure you experienced this writing your book. You think of these things as these kind of clean periods, or that you had this insight, like, this is when I knew I was going to do this. And then one of the great California writers is this guy, Bud Schulberg. I don't know if you know who that is. He wrote What Makes Sammy Run on the Waterfront.
Nice.
Anyways, he wrote this book called The Harder They Fall, which is about this sort of corrupt PR agent who's working for the mob as they fix boxing fights. And I read this book, and if you asked me when I knew I wanted to leave American Apparel and get out of this life, I would tell you it was the day I read that book. Wow. And I would say and I know it because the last page is this kind of big. He has this big insight. It goes, I'm realizing now you cannot deal in filth without becoming the thing you touch.
Yep.
Yeah, this is sort of mic truck moment. And so I was like, okay, so I read that, and I've gone back and looked at it. I can see the markings that I'm like, holy shit, what is this? It felt like, when you read something, you're like, I feel so attacked. This is about me specifically.
Interesting.
So anyways, that would have been when I thought my breakthrough happened. And then I was talking to someone about it. I was actually talking to Tim Miller about this, because he and I had similar sort of arcs on our journey.
Nice.
And I was like, as I was prepping for that conversation, I was like, oh, you know what? I bought this book on Amazon. I can see the day that I bought it. I can, and I went on Amazon, and so I left American Apparel in 2014 or 15, and my Amazon receipt for The Harder They Fall is like 2009.
Whoa.
It was like way closer to the beginning than the end.
Yeah, right.
And so you can often have you get the insight or the idea that the thing you understand it, but it can be a very long time until you understand it, and then more importantly, you have any of the sort of courage or clarity to act on it. And so that whole period is much more sort of contradictory and overlappy than it feels like. And it is important, if you're a young person, you're like looking at someone's life story, that you realize that when they lay it all out, it's all that gets smoothed, all that gets laid out narratively, and it gets smoothed out as well. And it can feel like it was this plan, or can feel like one thing was leading to the next, and that's all made up in retrospect. It's not like that in the moment. And by the way, history's not like that in the moment either. Nobody knows how the story is going to end. And so you have to kind of deal in that ambiguity more than you would like.
You wrote a lot about sort of ambiguity, wrote a lot about your own experience, and wrote a book that, we intentionally have not, even with you being around, have on the shelf there. Trust Me, I'm Lying.
I'm actually doing, I'm supposed to do the 15-year anniversary edition of that book.
You have to.
Yeah.
It was, you were decades ahead.
Yeah, it was funny when I was writing Trust Me, I'm Lying. I remember saying with the publisher, they were like, "We're thinking, like a summer 2012 release," and I go, I can't wait that long." I was like, all this stuff is like, no, it needs to come out right now. And I remember being rushed, and I was probably 10 years early.
Yeah,
15, but 15. It's a strange. So
just for folks that don't know much about this book, I mean, back to the timestamp, 2012.
Yeah.
And you were talking about citizen journalism. You were talking about legacy media. You were talking about truth and trust. You were talking about manipulation. You were talking about, the validation and how you're able to spread stories and validate that story and sources and I mean, tell us a little bit more.
I was trying to write sort of an expose of how the media system really worked, not how people thought it worked, which was objectivity and fact checkers, and I was looking at how the economics sort of shape it, and I was trying to show you like how the sausage gets made, like how stories that you're reading in the news, where they actually came from, and how easy it is to sort of inject things into that kind of slipstream. And obviously in 2016, we saw sort of Russia add a whole element of that. Mm-hmm. And, I was writing before TikTok, I was writing before Instagram even, really. So it's obviously become like hyperdrive of a lot of the stuff I was talking about in that book. I mean, I wish I could sit back here and go 15 years later, like I was totally proven wrong and everything was awesome. But it's sort of like beyond my worst nightmare of all the things I was talking about in that book, which is funny because when I wrote it, although a lot of people read it, the media reaction was mostly like, shoot the messenger, like he's the bad guy. And what I was trying to say is like, look, this is what I do to sell T-shirts or books, or this is how I can introduce something funny or ridiculous into the media cycle. But like, if media is where public opinion is formed, this vulnerability is just too valuable to too many powerful, important, or deranged people for them not to sort of take advantage of it. And I think we're seeing now a world where, you can sort of introduce alternative facts, as they say, into the system, and people believe them. What kind of vulnerabilities that exposes to us? And
they believe them, and you've talked about this. They believe them even after they're debunked. Sometimes even more.
Yeah.
After the quote unquote correction.
Well, this is always a complicated thing to talk about, but January 6th is a fascinating example of like everyone with eyes saw a thing happen. And then there was an investigation, right, that sort of laid out exactly what happened. But because one guy with a lot of followers, you saw him sort of you saw Trump in the early days after January 6th, where he was complicit and responsible for an unthinkable and inexcusable thing, scramble around for how's he going to explain this, and then sort of settles on it was Antifa,
yes,
and also these people were patriots, and which, by the way, are just two contradictory explanations, just off the top of his head. But then if he says it enough times, and if there is a financial and ideological and just cognitive reason to want that to be true, eventually a sizable percentage of the population will coalesce around that thing. Because to not do it would mean you have to face the tragedy and the horror and the violence and the implications of that thing. Yep. And so in a way, it just kind of lays bare our media system. I mean, it's like it's laid out in these different lawsuits. It's laid out in these like we know what happened, and we know the role that people played in it happening. And yet afterwards, he was able to kind of, with this media jujitsu, just make it not have happened.
All right. Well, I want to unpack all of that. And I mean, you were writing this back. I mean, when you wrote, trust me, I'm lying. You mentioned TikTok, it didn't exist. I mean, Facebook probably it was in its orphan phase. The cloud was in the sky. 4G was probably a parking space back then, and LinkedIn a prison. But algorithms weren't necessarily. You were talking blogs mostly back then, right?
Yeah, blogs and Twitter and how much traditional media was sort of the final step in that system, and now it doesn't need to be.
Final step after you seed.
Yeah.
The extreme, then you have a source. You say one source. Now you have two sources, and all of a sudden now it moves itself up the ladder. I see that. By the way, I live this.
Yes.
Daily Mail says something. The California Post says something. Now the New York Post says two sources.
Yes.
Have confirmed something. All of a sudden, I'm watching Jesse Waters on Fox, and then the next night, Hannity and all the rest of the lineup.
And then you have to respond to it.
And I'm responding, and then I'm chasing something, and I'm playing defense. They're already on to the next damn thing.
Yeah, and I mean, again, Trump, it's sort of intuitively understanding all this. He's really good at going. A lot of people are saying.
Everyone knows.
And so it's this way that things that are not true become true by you bump into them enough times.
But the point you're making is this is
it's bad.
It's not only bad, but it's been. I mean, it's wake up, everybody. It's the way it's been done. Yeah. It's hardly novel.
No. I mean, this has been the way that the sausage has been made for a decade and a half, basically.
Right. So your new book is going to tell us what to do about it. Is that
no? I mean, first, it's mortifying, of course, to have to go back and read something that you wrote when you were 23 and you thought you understood how the world worked. Right. Even though I was right about a lot of ways, I think you mostly. The cringe is mostly in the certainty and the arrogance, So that's why I've been procrastinating it. But that's what I.
Plus, you've minted out about 50 other damn books in the interim, so it's not like you're not busy. So I want to let's sort of circle back. So the hell of a time, American Apparel, and then you're hardly an old man. Your wife's saying, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. Mom and dad are like, Jesus, how did we raise you, young man?
Yeah.
Or not. They probably are more generous.
Yeah.
So where are you now in terms of just you go on a walkabout? Is that when you picked up meditations or?
No, I found, the irony is I found Stoicism before. In college, I found the Amazon receipt for that the other day, October 2006. So it's going on 20 years.
And what was the motive? You remember the motivation for even making the purchase?
Yeah. You want to know who told me about the Stoics?
Yeah.
There's no way you could guess. There's no way you could guess.
But Robert Greene would be the safe bet.
No, it was Dr. Drew.
Okay. Why not Dr. Drew?
I was writing for the college newspaper, and I went to this. I got invited to this conference in West Hollywood, which was sponsored by Trojan Condoms.
Okay.
And he was giving a talk, and after the talk, I was like, a young kid, I was just hungry for advice and direction and all these things, and I just said, hey, what you got any book recommendations? And he turned me on to the Stoics and changed the course of my life.
And which Stoic and which book?
He told me first about Epictetus. Okay. And I bought Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. And obviously it took a while for them to seep in. But sitting in Riverside, California, reading Marcus Aurelius' Meditations.
And what was that the first book? Was that the book?
I think that was the first one.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what is this? And
it really was that immediate?
Yeah. 100%. I didn't know there was writing like this. I didn't know there was advice like this. I didn't know it was what I was looking for, but it was exactly what I was.
And did you know there was about Stoicism, that he was about Stoicism, or was it just the most powerful man in the world and that intrigued you? I mean, and its life lessons.
We're only a few years out from the movie Gladiator at this time, so I think I was a little bit primed. But there was something about, I think what. At the core, young men are looking for direction, right? And they're looking for direction, particularly now in a world where a lot of the old sort of traditions and explicit and implicit instructions in that regard are gone. And so there's this just kind of existential void. There's this leadership void. You don't know how to be a person. And it's not like there are these rituals or these groups or this kind of process by which you become a man. That just doesn't exist. And so to pick up the private thoughts of the emperor of Rome, and he's talking to himself about how to not just be a productive person and a strong person, but also a wise person and a good person, and how to deal with everything from his temper to his anxiety to his sort of fear of death or his frustrations with other people. I didn't. If you had asked me to define philosophy in my late teens, I would have said, I don't know, it's like, it's those people in togas, or it's those people on college campuses, asking impossible questions about things for which there are no answers.
There you go.
It's for people smarter than me, right?
Yeah.
And then to read the Stoics, you go, oh, no, this is for people trying to be human beings, and trying to just deal with the difficulties of life. And that is what I think struck me so much about meditations, because even compared to the other Stoics, whether you're reading Seneca or Epictetus, they're at least talking to an audience, and there's something so personal and disarming about meditations, because here it's not meant for publication. It's just a guy. It's like a guy's inner monologue. It's like the angel on his shoulder, trying to be like, you're better than this. You should do this. Try to do that. What about this? And so I think I was blown away. And then particularly that he is such a good writer that even his notes to himself are some of the best philosophy ever written. I think that all is what struck me.
So you sort of, all of a sudden this book speaks to you and your time of life, your state of mind. Epictetus, similarly, you mentioned the big three of Stoics, but these aren't the OGs of Stoicism. I mean, what the broader Stoic construct for you, when did that click versus more of a contemporary version of Stoicism they represent?
The OGs of Stoicism, you get Zeno and you get Cleanthes and Chrysippus, Cato being maybe another one that maybe some people have heard of. That was the process of kind of tracing it backwards. Yeah. You kind of, I think most people should start with the big three of the Stoics, and then work their way back. There's a reason that they're the ones that are most well known, and that is a really cool thing. It just blows your mind about history, where you're like, okay, to Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism was ancient philosophy.
Ancient philosophy.
Zeno is to Marcus Aurelius what Shakespeare is to us.
I was quoting Plutarch the other day. The imbalance between the rich and the poor is the oldest and most fatal ailment of all republics. Yeah. Says it, 50, 70 AD.
Yes.
The oldest and most fatal ailment.
And you take Plutarch, right? Again, probably one of the great biographers. Truman would talk about how whenever he had a problem as president, he could pull out. He said, "I pull up my old friend Plutarch, my old friend Plutarch, and he would have the solution to my problems." But Plutarch is writing about Caesar and Cicero and Demosthenes and all these Greek and Roman figures who were to him what he is to us, not quite that far, but we think about ancient Greece and Rome as this kind of like brief moment, as opposed to a civilization that lasted hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Even the decline and fall of Rome is like 900 years, maybe a little bit less than that, depending on where you want to date it to. But the point is,
that should give us comfort in the U.S.
It does a little bit, but it gives you just realize that they were like, when they were going through stuff, when Marcus Aurelius is living through a civil war, or Cato is living through a civil war, or Seneca is in exile or enduring the reign of Nero, what are they turning to? Yeah. They're turning to the ancients, who we are also turning to, and then what we have is generations of. This is why they call philosophy the great conversation, because it's these core ideas that were sort of brought into existence at some point, but the genius of them is the layering on top of each subsequent generation, trying and riffing, and just as the founders, I gave you Jeffrey Rosen's The Pursuit of Happiness. The founders were turning to the Stoics. My 9-year-old is obsessed with Hamilton.
Oh, good.
Right, the play Hamilton. Yeah. The most famous play in the Western world in the 18th century was a play about Cato. And it was as famous as Hamilton is now. And in the way that, like if you go immigrants, they get the job done. People know what you're talking about. When George Washington would talk about, looking at events through the calm light of mild philosophy, or when they say, I regret I have but one life to give for my country. Right. These are lines from that play. And so it's this great tradition of these ideas being just so perfectly expressed, and the example being so powerful that people have been turning to it over and over again. And that's the really powerful thing. Stoicism wasn't Marcus Aurelius; it was 600 years of it in Greece and Rome, and then it continues on up. It's not like people haven't been talking about it and riffing about it in the 1800 years since. They absolutely have. And so it's just this energy I think you tap into and you go, oh, these are ideas that have really been tested in the crucible of human experience.
Was the word Stoic? When Zeno was 300 BC or something?
Yeah.
He said, I declare myself a Stoic. Was he declared a Stoic?
Well, I think it's to Zeno's credit that the philosophy is not called Zenoism, right? There's a little bit right at the beginning. There's some humility. So the founding story of Stoicism is Zeno's a merchant, and he deals in this rare purple dye, and that dye being a commodity in those days.
Yeah. Dye purple.
Yeah, we think of like, it's funny where the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, global trade, that's the modern thing. It's like, no, the purple dye was this commodity that was made across multiple islands in the Mediterranean, and it would get traded and moved around. Like the same navigational issues we're having right now, people were talking about then. But he suffers this shipwreck. He washes up in Athens and ends up there discovering philosophy. And that's where Stoicism starts. But he just begins lecturing about these ideas on the Stoa Pokila, which is the painted porch in Athens. And that's what Stoic means. It just, Stoa means porch. It doesn't mean anything. These are just the guys from the porch, bullshitting and talking and sharing. It is funny then that he would talk about that's this merchant of purple dye, his philosophy would become the philosophy we associate with Marcus Aurelius, because I could tell you mouthing the words there. One of the powerful lines in Meditations is Marcus Aurelius says, and this is a reference to being emperor. He says, "Be careful that you are not dyed purple." So and he's saying that make sure that power doesn't corrupt you.
God bless.
Because the Roman emperor was one of the few that could wear the color purple.
So you're reading all of this. Your portal to this, beginning with Meditations, which has had an outsized influence on everybody that's ever picked up.
When did you pick it up?
Picked up all the wrong versions.
Yeah.
Couldn't understand a damn thing.
Interesting.
I look back, it's interesting. I must have 15 or 20 different copies.
Wow.
And it took me listening to you on damn YouTube to go, here's the one I recommend. I'm like, start reading. I'm like, wait, then this makes some sense. Because the translations are, back to decades and decades ago. So I think my father, someone, was around, and then my uncle says, here's a book you should read. I'm like, Jesus, last thing. So they just sort of collected dust, but there were a few efforts.
Yes.
And they just didn't go anywhere because it didn't speak to me with the kind of language that I understand today.
I don't believe in miracles, but I went on Amazon and I just bought a random copy. That I got the first one. I got the copy that changed my life, and I've now recommended it to so many people. That's the algorithm blessed me.
Blessed you.
For someone who's so critical of algorithms, in that one case, the algorithm blessed me.
By the way, one of the things I love that you do is you'll go back to the same, you'll go to different translations.
Yeah.
And you're able to sort of lay them out. And it shows, how language has radically changed.
Well,
and how important the translation is.
Yes. So I don't speak Greek or Latin, so I don't know exactly, but it is interesting when you read all these different translations, you go, oh, like this is the same idea and 15 different cuts on it. And what a big role the translator plays. And also what a big role the moment in time that you're in plays.
True.
So how you
interpret it in the context of something contemporary.
So I've been reading meditation for 15 years. And then 2020, pandemic hits, and I'm reading meditations. And all of a sudden, there's all these references to the plague and to pestilence. And you realize, oh, this is a plague book. This guy wrote in the middle of the Antonine Plague, this 15-year pandemic that killed millions of people.
And you never picked up on that. I mean, necessarily.
I guess you think he's being metaphorical.
Yeah.
And then you realize he's being literal. Like one of the passages I thought the most about during the pandemic is this one where he goes, there's two types of plagues. There's the one that can destroy your health and the one that can destroy your character. And then you watch over the next 2 years, people get radicalized, people turn off their hearts and their neighborliness to other people, and in other cases lose their mind, become do and say things they would have been shocked by just a few years earlier. And you go, oh, that he must have seen that. he must have seen that. Yeah. And I think there's a famous story about Marcus Aurelius. He's presiding over some court, and one of the lawyers makes this reference to the victims of the plague, and he just bursts into tears. And so you think, number one, I thought the Stoics don't have emotions. Right. I thought they don't care about people.
Yes.
And then and here he is just sort of weeping over these untold thousands of people who have died. In some cases, people we would have cared deeply about and been very close to. And you go, oh, that's not what Stoicism isn't. This fuck you, I got mine. Yeah. Or like, I got a strong immune system.
Did you think it was when you first heard about it? Because so many people see it as just, I will have no emotion. I'm just being stoic, it's sort of rigid, robotic.
I think what I was attracted to Stoicism for the reason that young men have been attracted to Stoicism for centuries, which is it's about getting your shit together, getting it on lock, just that sort of ownership and control of the self, which I think if anyone needs help in, it's young men. So I think that was my initial attraction to it. And then, and I think I was attracted to the trappings of power and, all the things that make it, interesting and unique compared to, I don't know, existentialism or some other school of philosophy. But over the years, you realize, oh, this is actually a profoundly ethical philosophy. This is about our connections to other people. This is about our responsibilities to other people. This is about being like when they're talking about excellence, they don't simply mean professional excellence, and that actually professional excellence is pretty common, but professional and personal excellence, like sort of rounding that package out, is actually the sort of thing to be more ambitious about. So I think my initial attraction to it was one thing, and then what it works on you. And I think it's interesting to hear you talk about sort of starting and stopping it over the years. Like it's important that people understand Stoicism is a philosophy you should be reading, not a philosophy you have read. You say that. I love that you say that. And also you make the point, and I don't remember exactly who said it, but you never swim in the same river twice. Yes.
This notion that the river's changed or step in the same river. Yeah. I'll swim in it too.
I like that too.
American, just up the block where you were growing up. But we change as well.
Yes.
And back to this, you're reading it again, and now we're in a plague, and all of a sudden you're reading it almost as a new visitor to the same old.
Well, I think it's so fascinating that, you picked up a book when you were one age, you picked it up again, another, it continually wasn't working. And then at some point, and I bet if you actually laid those translations out side by side, they're not that different.
They're not that
I think you were profoundly different.
Well, I was trying to find language, period. I wrote a book about my own learning disability. So just, I mean, literally the words, just above my pay grade. That needs to be explained to me. I remember Shakespeare class in college. I mean, you're toast as a dyslexic. You're like, wow, me doth doth. I mean, Jesus. So you're like immediately trying to find a Cliff Note version or something on TV that you could claim that I read or understood. Yeah. So no, so you did all that, so you're reading this, but you weren't necessarily going, wait a second, this is my new path, my career that I'm going to become, I'm going to translate this to a whole different audience, that I'm going to be able to express this with new media. I'm going to be able to get a whole new generation to understand and bring to life these extraordinary figures.
No, I mean, I was introduced to the Stoics in 2006, and my first book on Stoic philosophy came out in summer of 2014. So,
and what was the inspiration? What said, I have to do my version of this? Been plenty written about Stoicism.
Yeah, I don't know. I wrote my first book because I wanted to be a writer, and I knew that book had to come first. You couldn't write the Stoic books and then the media book. So I knew I had to get the media book out of the way. So I did the media book first, and then what I really wanted to write about was the Stoics. But I thought I had this idea for one Stoic book about this one passage from Marcus Aurelius.
That was it.
Again,
obstacles away. What stands in the way becomes the way.
Yes,
I love it. Come on.
I know.
How
I heard
good
you
is
say this somewhere.
I mean, it's too good.
It's the best.
It's the best.
The
impediment to action becomes the action. Yes, stands the way becomes the way.
But you want to know something funny about that quote? Again, you evolve your understanding of these things as you go. So I wrote the book, The Obstacles Away, mostly about how we deal with like professional obstacles, right? Like how you're trying to like do something and something gets in the way, which is obviously what he's partly talking about there. But the fuller quote, which obviously I knew because I edited it to put some ellipses in there, but mostly what he's talking about is annoying people and obnoxious people. He's saying people can cause problems for us. They can get in our way, but he says we always have the ability to accommodate and adapt. He says we can convert this to our own potential acting. And then he says, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And then you go, oh, okay. So when he's saying some person comes up and says something horrible to you, or some person screws something up for you, or some person is just constantly stressing you out or abusing you or whatever it is, what he's saying is that's an opportunity for you to be the better person, the bigger person, to grow as a person in wrestling with and handling what this person is doing to you. And so you go, oh, okay, like when the Stoics are saying the obstacles away, they don't necessarily mean, oh, this is a chance to, hey, this huge recession that we just got plunged into is actually a chance for you to retrench in the business and tighten things up and come back smarter and leaner and more organized. It may be, but he's saying actually, this person who just broke your heart, or this person who just lied to you or stole from you, or this person who just said something horrible to you, they're a chance for you to grow as a human being in how you respond to them. That is obviously not my reading of the passage when I'm 19, but it's how I understand it 20 years later.
And you understand it, it's sort of the core part of what you said is sort of for you, if you were going to distill the essence of Stoicism, this notion that we have agency. Yes. That, it's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to what happens to us.
Yeah. I'd be curious, like in politics, isn't that? I'd be curious to find some line of work in which that's not
the case.
Right? Like you wake up and somebody gives you the news, and then you figure out your job is to say, "Here's what we're going to do."
Yeah, but so much of our life is this sort of victim mentality that that it's fate. And we can't control our own fate. Yeah. The system's rigged against me. There's nothing I can do. Nothing one person can do.
Yes. This is whose fault it is. This is why it should have gone the other way. Yeah. Just a lot of dwelling on why it happened as opposed to what you're going to do about it.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me, just I write a little bit, and some of my friends are like, why are you writing about Tony Robbins? But it's interesting. I write about it because I was, around your age, and all of a sudden my contemporary version of, dare I say,
how dare you,
was this guy with, who self-described with big teeth on infomercials selling me cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And I listened to those today, and I'm like, what? So much is,
Well, I do think that there's a little bit there that's just a complete indictment of philosophy as a whole these days, right? Like that is, that's what Socrates was doing. That's what Aristotle was doing. They were trying. I mean, Socrates gets killed for corrupting the youth, which is to say, teaching the young boys what they need to know about life that their parents didn't want them to know, right? Or challenging convention, or teaching them a new way of thinking. And I guess it just says something that philosophy does not speak to people in a way that it's supposed to. It is supposed to be the guide to the good life, which, to me, the American dream is both a financial dream, but also a sort of a moral and a spiritual dream of a better life. And philosophy is supposed to be part of that. And it's just not. And I think we're in extra trouble when, organized religion has not just fallen away, but also, alienated huge swaths of the population, whether you're talking about the abuse scandals in the Catholic Church, which is what I grew up in, or you're looking at the sort of political radicalization of sort of evangelical faith. And so if you're not going to have traditions and sort of rituals, you're also not going to have religion. Where are people supposed to learn this stuff? And it's I think created a huge vacuum that certain bad actors have stepped in to fill.
And you haven't become a bad actor.
Thanks.
You talk about, because you talked, we can go back to sort of March 2020 and sort of the beginning, and we could talk about that pandemic. People, it explains more things in more ways on more days of everything.
Sure.
Our relationships, back to truth and trust, is certainly our politics. I didn't fully absorb it, appreciate it at the time, and what we've become on the other side, and what people became. They were unrecognizable to this day that went through that process. We can get to Elon Musk in a minute, but I knew him well before.
That's my favorite part of your book. You talked about how you came of age at the same time as all those Silicon Valley people.
I was with Larry and Sergey at Google, and when Steve Jobs taps us on the shoulder and says, hey, he wasn't interested in me, he was interested in Larry and Sergey, to show us, pulled out of his back pocket, the first iPhone. And we're like, it was like a joyride. We're going with our fingers like, and they were all they were just, and there was sense of optimism back to when you were writing this book.
So what happened? Like, I think that quote where Elon Musk is on Rogan and he says, empathy is going to be the death of Western civilization. That to me was one. And then when I watched Mark Andreessen talk about how he has zero introspection, and he's like, I never look backwards. He goes, I never look backwards. Yeah. And it's like, by the way, that's not what introspection is. Just to be like, you clearly don't even know what it is. Like, introspection is looking inwards. Just to be clear, it's not looking backwards. But he goes, the great men of history, they didn't look around. They didn't. It's like the bad ones, the ones who were responsible for genocides and pointless wars and ecological disasters and economic calamities. Yes, they had no sense of introspection or history or perspective. But the great ones, whether you're talking about FDR or Truman or Theodore Roosevelt, Washington or Lincoln,
the best of the best.
All the greats. And,
yes.
And I just named a bunch of white dudes, so I'm sorry. But like, you could...
We could talk about that too, and where women are in the Stoic
You could
history.
expand, but the point is that the great historical figures are by definition profoundly considerate and conscientious people. And when they're not, it is responsible for their biggest failings. And So what?
So what's happened?
Well, I was.
What the hell happened?
Yeah, what happened?
And what happened to you that you didn't fall prey to all that? I mean, your rise has just gone. I mean, you were wildly successful before the pandemic, but I mean, now the ubiquity and your success, it's just exploded.
Yeah,
but it suggests that people they haven't necessarily been sold that bill of goods either. That they're looking for something different.
Look, I've definitely experienced some success. It's small potatoes compared to being, one of the richest or most powerful people in the world. So I don't want to judge people whose thing, whose sort of experience is something I can't even comprehend. But it does seem weird that these people, many of whom I also knew or met over the years and thought were one thing, and sort of revealed themselves to be another. What's your explanation?
I'm struggling with it, and I've been struggling. I mean, I struggle with it a little bit in the book. Even who I was becoming. I was and God bless. I was reading one of your books a few years ago and took a little indirect shot at me, and I thought it was completely legit.
What did I say?
You just say, back. I don't even want to get back.
I don't even
one of the most important stories you always say is what during the plague, what Marcus Aurelius did. He sold all the things, and here I was going to a damn restaurant.
Oh, did I make
and
it?
You made it, and I'm like, you know what? Fair, and it was legit. It hurt. It hurt because it was right, and of course I knew I was no greater critic of me than me, and so I appreciate it. But so, but in a lot of what I write about in this book, I mean, talk about ego.
Yeah, no, there's some words in there. You
right?
talk about your
the whole thing. I mean, I laid it all out, and I laid myself out. Yeah. In this sort of journey of discovery, this memoir of discovery and discovering myself and my own, and my own, there's so many, but expectations and how I was living in other people's expectations. Yeah. And I was kind of losing myself, and how now, and I think it's why I sort of really dove deep into your work. It's just so sort of all coincided. I'm like, just literally just breathe again. And have perspective and grace and humility.
So you're saying introspection.
Introspection.
Like the thing they are running away from.
The coarseness. Yeah. That's why I've got, forgive me, I didn't mean to put you behind these knee pads. And I think about with Trump, I mean, the obstacles away, to me, it's so profound in the context of how I'm dealing with the challenges and the obstacle. It stands in the way of from my perspective, decency, lack of character, all those cardinal virtues that you write so beautifully about. This notion of justice, and this notion of what courage really is, and temperance, all these found in what discipline looks like. It's an anathema to what we have today. But I think about, all right, obstacle is the way. Stands the way, becomes a way. So how we can sort of with agency, manifest and take responsibility and have the discipline and the character to, not just identify the problems, but begin to march strategies and iteration to address these problems and to move in a more enlightened direction. And again, you've been a huge part of that for millions of us. It's but certainly for the guy sitting here as the current occupant of the governor's mansion.
That's unbelievable to me. I think, there's this passage in Meditations where Marcus Aurelius talks about fighting to be the person that philosophy tried to make you.
I love it.
And I think about that. That's what he's doing in Meditations. Is he's trying to be better than whatever he could get away with, or whatever he might just be on his own. He's sort of aspiring to be some greater self, and it does feel like in the sort of Silicon Valley kind of like leadership class, there is this, and Trump, I think, it obviously hastened it, but it's this kind of like, why should you try to be better? Why just do what you want?
Yeah, get yours.
When you're famous, they let you do it, and it's like the embracing of that, and the idea of like, why. One of my favorite headlines of all time, there's this Huffington Post headline from 15 years ago, and it says, I don't know how to explain to you that you're supposed to care about other people. And and it really does feel like there was this concerted effort in a small group of people to just let themselves off the hook for being responsible for or to anyone, despite the incredible power and privilege that they enjoy.
There you go. And we're living with the consequences of that. I mean, we've hit on, young men, but you subtly made the point. I'll make it more express. Young men are in crisis.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how you connect tradition and rituals, and now I mean, we're seeing a little bit now with religion. People are sort of fighting religion a little bit again, but we've lost those institutions, that connection to each other. I am because you are. This notion of Ubuntu, this commonwealth, and this, and of course with algorithms, and now this manosphere broadly defined, and Hustlers University and Bugatti, and Get Mine, and and all the just patriarchy that comes in there. I mean, and these guys sometimes trying to attach these damn.
I know. It's I try to say it's not, Stoicism is not a formula for you to be a better sociopath.
God bless you.
It's supposed to do the opposite. It's supposed to help you, because look, we're all inherently selfish. We are all self-interested. And the Stoics talk about this. Like, you come out of the womb being like inherently not just dependent on others, but you will suck your parents dry, literally and figuratively, so you can survive. That's what your genes are designed for you to do.
That's right.
And that maturation or growth, the Stoics would say, is the overcoming of that, realizing that you have these obligations and duties to not just these people immediately around you, but everyone else. Like, there's this Stoic named Hierocles, and he talked about the circles of concern.
Yeah.
And that he said the purpose of the philosophy is pulling these outer rings inwards. And to me, that, like, when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's what they were talking about in church as a kid. That's also what Jesus was talking about. And so there is actually if Catholicism, especially because it has those cardinal virtues, I think you immediately recognize it in the Stoics that, this was the tradition before that tradition, and that there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, well, I love. I mean, just even when we were celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration, best of Roman Republic, best of Greek democracy. Yeah. I mean, back to your point in terms, even the books, thank you for the books, but just reminding me, the founding fathers, the direct inspiration from these greats.
Yeah, Washington's the only one of the founders who doesn't read the Stoics in Greek or Latin. Like, he only reads them in English. Because they were so familiar. Like, Jefferson has Seneca in French on his nightstand when he dies, and so, like, these were incredibly literate philosophical figures, and the primary influence on the founders was not those English legal thinkers. It was when they're writing the Federalist Papers and they're masquerading as these Roman characters, they're thinking about Cato, they're thinking about Seneca, they're thinking about Marcus Aurelius. Those are the people who are influencing them the most. And that does go back to, I think, the founding of America, which we've fundamentally misunderstood. This idea that, yes, on the one hand, this is a country about freedom, where the state can't tell you how to be or how to live. Your individual behavior is not legally prescribed the way that it would be in another society. But they were very much of the mind that all that freedom was to be counterbalanced by a sense of virtue in the people. And John Adams said, like, hey, without it, we're fucked. Like, the Constitution is not strong enough. He says it will go like a whale through a net.
Like a whale through. I love that.
Actually, this is my. I wrote a piece about this for The Economist a couple of years ago, and maybe now that you're leaving office, this could be your next project.
Thanks a lot.
So Viktor Frankl talked about how there's a Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor, and he believed that it should be counterbalanced by a Statue of Responsibility in San Francisco Harbor.
That's funny.
And I think
There's people.
The idea that we're going to spend federal money to make Alcatraz a prison again, when what we desperately need as a society is not to lock more people up. We need a monument, I think, to responsibility and our obligations to each other.
Ryan, I was just talking to Senator Padilla about this. We are literally, this is a real conversation.
No way.
Yeah, so I'm not waiting till I'm out of office, all right?
Amazing.
No, I love this idea.
Well,
this notion of responsibility, I don't want to get into too political, but it's kind of missing in my party at the kind of level that I think it needs to be. We talk about opportunity. We talk in terms of community sometimes, but not responsibility. It's about service and civics, and I mean all these. It's really critical. And back to I don't know. There's it's part of that three-legged stool, and I think often we're talking two legs, not that third leg.
Well, and also the responsibility and agency are related to each other, right? Because there is this thing in our society where I think most people are like, hey, this shouldn't be happening. This isn't good. I don't like this. This is wrong. And then everyone is waiting for somebody else to do something about it.
I mean, Brandeis said in democracy, the most important office is office of citizen.
Yeah.
Active, not inert citizenship.
But you mentioned the Democratic Party. I think even like your thing on redistricting, right? Like everyone is like, hey, what they're doing in Texas, which is where I live, is wrong. It's rigging the system, whatever. And then like the typical Democratic Party response would be, why don't they stop doing that?
Exactly. Write an op-ed.
Yeah.
So shame on them. Yeah. Shame on them. Meanwhile, they're consolidating power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's hard though, right? Because you want to, when the Michelle Obama, when they go low, we want to go high, and we have a higher sense of self in that respect. But we'll lose this republic.
Yeah,
this is the way I feel.
Right.
I mean, this is code red.
Yes,
this is serious. And so this notion of having agency stands in the way. I'm going to keep coming back. Please. You wrote the damn book. You rewired my brain, and this notion. It literally that became the foundation, the inspiration, and the responsibility to be held to a higher level of accountability, particularly when you have this gift. For me, it's a gift of public service, and to be in this position, I don't want to dream of regretting.
Well, and because it could have not worked. Yeah. Right? It could have been, it could have failed. It could have been embarrassing. Yeah. It could have been the end of your
100%.
And
all the above.
But there is this sort of sense of like, well, I got to keep my powder dry for the moment that there is this thing where people tell themselves, hey, like later I'll be more secure.
Yeah.
Or later, that's when I'll do it. And the result is nobody's doing anything. That's what it feels like.
I mean, come on. I mean, well, you look, you write a lot about this. You talk a lot about this. It's the do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stop talking, stop thinking about it. Just start doing it. You got to, it's action, and this notion, when I'm 30 then, or when I'm a millionaire then, or when I have then I'll be,
Yes.
Or, this notion, even you have to be something to do something.
Yeah.
That I have to be a city council or governor or mayor before I can move there. I don't think Gandhi waited around for elected office. I don't recall, seriously, was it President King? Dr. King?
No,
it wasn't? All right. I mean, even the guys that served in office like Havel or even Mandela, I don't remember, 4 years of Mandela's presidency were interesting, the new constitution. I don't want to disregard it, but that's not why I think of Mandela. His peak of his power was when he was in jail.
And
there's moral authority.
And one of the things that you miss too is like, we're naming the named guys. And most of those were men, but you're naming mostly the people that we've heard of, as if they also weren't part of enormous organizations of a bunch of ordinary people who were also participating. And so, like it may fall on you to be one of those people, but it may also just fall on like Rosa Parks was a secretary at the NAACP, and eventually, yes, she also has her moment in the thing. But if that had been the only thing she'd done, if she'd only been answering phones there,
you've got it.
That would have enabled whoever ultimately was the person who doesn't go to the back of the bus, right?
And of course, she was an echo of Ida B. Wells and so many others that inspired along the way.
There's this other book I should have brought you. Do you know what the Highlander School was?
No.
Okay, so again, we think of Rosa Parks. as like this lady that just gets tired one day and, sets in motion. There was this thing in Tennessee, in the mountains of Tennessee, called the Highlander School, which is run by this sort of folksy family of activists. And it was a school where they trained activists in nonviolence and political activism. And almost all the major figures of the civil rights movement, including John Lewis, including Rosa Parks, they all go to this school. Okay. And it's not only...
I'm going to deny that I didn't know about it.
It's not only humiliated. Not only do they learn the things, like they would practice, having racial slurs shouted at them, and how do you roll on the ground and cover yourself as you're getting beaten? How do you talk to people? But it's also where like the relationships that they then took back all over the country. But it's like nobody knows the name of this school, or not enough people do. But those people, their coaching tree. Yeah. I'm right now forgetting the names of the founders of the Highlander School. Septima Clark was one of the graduates. Their coaching tree leads to the civil rights movement, just as, by the way, Gandhi's coaching tree leads to the people that came back to found the Highlander School. And so, again, one of the things the Stoics talk about is that like we're all assigned these like parts, these roles.
Love it. And
we don't know what it is. It could be a big one, it could be a little one, but your job is to just play the hell out of that role. And but chances are your role is not sit on the sidelines and complain about what's happening.
I can't take it. I mean, I just can't take it. I can't take and I don't mean to disregard people that truly do feel like they're victims and have plenty of receipts to back that up. I can't take it.
Yeah.
Do something. Seriously. It's exhausting. But I love what you're saying about just, we all have this role. I mean, it's the Whitman, right? O'Meal life, the powerful play goes on and we all must contribute our verse. And this notion that we have to contribute our verse. Again, back to agency.
Whitman was doing in the Civil War, he was volunteering in hospitals, taking care of soldiers. Like there's always something you can do.
Yes.
And the problem is, I think our political leaders are not willing to risk their political careers.
Well, they had no problem in risking their political reputation by trying to get rid of Rosa Parks' race in the social studies books because it was woke.
Right.
As if race had anything to do with her story. They finally were called out on that. By the way, as you were called out of the Naval Academy.
Yeah, that was fun.
The hell was that?
It was surreal. Yeah, I was supposed to.
Some of your great speeches and lectures.
Thank you.
Are there?
And it was the honor of my life to be able to.
And the reception you get there is off the charts.
But one of the few things that gives me hope about our society is if you spend any time with people who are in the armed services right now. It's like
the West Point guy. I was with a dozen of these kids. It blew me away.
Especially because like that was the opposite of who I was at 17, 18, 19, 20. You're just like, yeah. you have it together at this level. It's incredible. And they could be at Harvard. They could be working at some Wall Street firm. They could be anywhere other than what they're doing, and they're choosing to be there. And then you watch, even as they are being mismanaged, as they objectively are right now, just what they are able to do, the problems they are able to solve.
Oh, come on.
It's incredible.
No.
So anyways, so I was supposed to give a talk at the Naval Academy, and I was
canceled the last minute, right?
Yeah, about an hour before I was supposed to go on, because I was going to make the political statement that I think removing books from the library is a bad idea.
Yeah, I think there was 2 years ago 4,340 books, if I recall the exact number, that were banned in libraries or schools across this country. This banning binge, rewriting history, censoring historical facts, as if that makes us stronger and wiser.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this person's going to be, in charge of nuclear weapons or flying a fighter jet, but Maya Angelou's memoir is too
literal
woke for them to handle. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they can't handle it.
Yeah, they won't be able to handle it.
They're way too sensitive for that.
Yeah, exactly.
But you gave the lecture nonetheless.
Yeah, well, I
gave it online.
Tried to put the stuff into practice. I was like, oh, actually, it was an interesting insight into it too, because I remember talking to the person giving, the messenger who had to pass along that I was, being, and who I really felt for, because it's like, hey, this dude has a pension. Anyways, he goes, look, we we just don't want to draw any attention to ourselves. And I said, I don't think that's how this works. I think canceling a lecture an hour before I'm supposed to go on is going to add a lot more attention.
Yeah, there were a few dozen headlines, and
so I gave the talk online, and it was obviously seen by a lot more people than would have there.
But and you had the audacity to talk about, I don't know, these extreme progressive liberal woke admirals like Stockdale.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Among many others.
By the way, a great California story there. The Navy sends him to Stanford in 1961, and he gets an advanced degree and as part of his studies there, he takes classes in comparative Marxism.
That's what I forgot. That's right.
And then is introduced to Epictetus, and it's those two things that allow him to survive the POW experience. And I was
like 7 years or something.
I was fascinated to read about your grandfather.
Yeah.
Just like what
he didn't read Epictetus.
Well,
he came back a different guy.
When you are exposed to an experience that's designed to break you as a human being,
yep.
And they strip you down and then just fling you back into the world, like very few people can manage that. And the reason that Stockdale doesn't break is that he is introduced to these things at a woke liberal institution run by California hippies.
And it's interesting. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole with Stockdale, but this notion of optimism, it was not that wasn't his go-to default. To just remain optimistic. He just remained clear and confident at the end goal.
Yeah,
the optimists didn't tend to do as well as prisoners.
Well, the Stoic version of optimism is not, oh, this is going to go amazingly, I'm going to get lucky breaks. Yeah. The Stoic version of optimism is, I'm going to be better for this, however horrible it is.
Yeah.
And ultimately, his view was he was going to comport himself in such a way that if he survived, he would not just be proud of how he acted. That's the idea of returning with honor, which they now teach all POWs. But that he was going to turn it into something, he said, that in retrospect he would not trade away. And I think that's how we have to see this moment. Like, look, I would love to have a normal president. I'd love to have normal politics. I'd love to have not lived through a pandemic. I would love if you had given me my choice of how I would like the last 10 years to go, I would have picked very differently. But number one, you don't get a choice. Number two, you think you know how you want it to go, but you actually don't. And three, the only thing you have a say over is how do you look back and go, that was my moment. That was a thing that I rose up to meet. And that's going to be different for all of us. But that's, to me, what the Stoic is trying to say is that, hey, I want to be able to look back on this period and say, I was what I was capable of being, and that I grew and was changed by that experience for the better. That is, to me, actually a profoundly optimistic and hopeful thing to say. It's also realistic.
You look back at Stoicism, anything they, from your perspective, got wrong?
Well, like basically everyone for the last 2,000 years, they get the whole slavery thing wrong.
There was a little of that. I mean, Marcus Aurelius, slavery. You had Seneca working for a guy named, boss named Nero.
Yes, so
wealthy guy.
There's the kind of just basic, personal decisions, and you can't study history and not go, hey, this person was flawed and made mistakes. We're all products of our time. So there's certainly a lot of things like that. How
about in their teachings?
Well, look, they believed, I think, much more in predetermination and predestination than we do. They had obviously to go to the idea of agency, right? Like there were all these things that they thought couldn't be changed, that they thought was just a fact of life, and in a way, this explains the political stuff, right? Like even Epictetus, the slave, doesn't question the institution of slavery. And so, when you look back at history, you can't help but be grateful to the sort of revolutionary, radical, progressive people who imagined that the world could be something different than it currently is.
Yeah, I love that.
And if there's anything that the Stoics get wrong, it's just that they were resigned to the world being the way that it had always been.
Yeah.
And we are lucky that Gandhi was like, hey, what if there's a way to solve problems that doesn't involve terrorism or insurrection or overthrowing a government, and Martin Luther King picks that up from him. And the gay rights activists pick that up from them. And, we're obviously lucky that all these different innovations happened where people were like, we're in the debt of Thomas Clarkson, who in the 1700s writes an essay at Oxford about whether people should own slaves or not. And then says, well, what if I'm right and they shouldn't? And then maybe someone should do something about it. And then he says, maybe that person could be me. And that's where the abolitionist movement comes from. And, you go back, back and back and back. We are the beneficiaries of the people who imagined the world being better than it is.
I love that.
And Stoicism cannot simply be a tool for accepting the status quo.
You just finished a book on wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about these cardinal virtues. You end on wisdom. You don't begin with wisdom, even though you said none of the other virtues are possible without wisdom. So why the hell did you end the series?
I saved the hardest one for last. I felt weird starting with wisdom, just on a practical writing standpoint. But I don't know. I felt like the last, alphabetically, it's last. Maybe that's no, there's no good reason. They're all. Zeno said that the cardinal virtues: courage, discipline, temperance, or courage, discipline, justice, wisdom. They were independent yet inseparable from each other.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter what order you think about them, what order you read about them, what order you write them about them. They all. You can't have one without the other. I mean, courage in pursuit of injustice is no impressive thing.
No.
And then, how do you know what the right thing is without wisdom? How do you bring good into the world without savvy and competence? I think that's one of our big problems right now is like, we just think that being right is sufficient. You have to be a savvy political operator. You have to be a savvy business operator. Like just because you're in the broad strokes correct, that'll get you what?
So what are you working on next?
I'm doing a biography of Stockdale.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about him enough.
He's one of my heroes.
About time and he's, and forgive me because it's impossible to talk about Stockdale except he's better known. And this is why you need to write the book.
Yeah.
Because he deserves not to be better known for one simple line in a vice presidential debate. What, sir, was that line?
Who am I? Why am I here?
Which, as a Stoic,
philosophically, it's actually a great line.
For debate prep, you may want to use different language.
Yes. Yeah, the family, I'll save it for writing, but apparently there's a big story as to how he found himself on that stage. And
Ross Perot's VP nominee. Yeah.
But Dennis Miller has a great bit about Stockdale where he says, this was the first guy in, last guy out of Vietnam, hero.
Like 7 years, right?
Yeah.
Prisoner of war?
Serves honorably, wins the Medal of Honor, does all this. And he says he committed the one unpardonable sin in our society. Do you know what it is?
What? I mean,
he was bad on television.
He was bad on TV. There you go. It's pathetic what's happened to us, huh?
Yeah.
Sincerely. Mm-hmm. This is rather pathetic.
Yeah. You imagine the incredibly, as a charismatic, good-looking man. I imagine there are many, many more qualified people that could not can't cut it politically because they look bad in an ad or in a speech or
100%.
That 80 years ago, you only would have heard about from a newspaper column, and they could have. Could Taft be president now?
Good question, right? Yeah, not on the basis of what he's been described.
And I mean, even FDR has to hide that he has a
Which is remarkable.
disability.
I mean, even Kennedy, there's a reason the rocking chair. I mean, and he was, there plenty of, external things that were injected to get him through the day. I mean, in an Instagram 24/7.
Yeah, probably would not have made it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and of course the infamous there. I mean, the first TV president.
Yes. The Nixon Kennedy debates.
Yeah. Radio, Nixon crushes him. TV, Kennedy.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. I'm glad so it's good for you on the Stockdale thing. So you got every morning, if you haven't got, by the way, everyone listening, watching needs to subscribe to the damn morning email.
Oh, the Daily Stoic email?
Which is next level.
Thank you.
And what I love about it too, it's, repetition's a mother skill too. What I like is it's not one and done. You'll come back to old themes.
Yeah.
And I don't see that as a critique.
There's not that many themes.
No, but it's important, right?
Yeah.
So it's reps. And, you're sort of, and so it's remarkably, and it's a quick read every morning, great way to wake up, sort of recalibrate your brain, and it's contemporary. You put things, I love it. If you're feeling all these things, you're like, yes and yes. So clearly whoever's writing those things,
That's
you or
me.
others.
What do you mean if someone's writing those things?
It's free. What more can I say? But it's profoundly impactful and something everyone should sign up for. You've got, you did what I did again. Your damn January.
Oh, you did it?
Yeah.
Wow.
I sat there in Lake Tahoe at 1 degrees, jumping in the damn river with icicles, by the way.
Wow.
I should have gone on my Instagram.
You should have.
But I didn't look pretty. I need to get a little better shape. I didn't look good without the shirt on. Plus I had underwear, so it's another conversation. So I was out there and, it was day one, the polar plunge.
That's
then
incredible.
I had to burn away my intent, whatever the other thing.
Yes.
But you're doing that. You got 26 for 26. You had the thing. You've got all the stuff on YouTube. Got all the. I mean, come on, man.
This is crazy.
When's enough? Are you a Stoic? Is this what Stoic talks?
This is what I like to do. I'd be doing it. This is what I do.
This is what I do. Well, it's. I appreciate you coming back home.
Of course.
Coming back to California.
Yeah.
Off your ranch in Texas, which ain't so bad. And your credible kids. And I'm going to close on this. The best thing you do as a father of 4, the daily dad, and dispensing advice as a father.
Yeah. Thank you.
What was the inspiration of that besides little ones?
My life was made better by writing about Stoicism every day, the forced practice of having to do the meditation. And so when we had our first, I was like, you know what, I'll take the best parenting advice, not my advice, 'cause I don't know shit. But like, what are the best, smartest people, the wisest people say about this? And I'll riff on it each morning. And so the Daily Dad, is almost 8 years old now, 9 years old. And it's made me a better parent because I'm writing about this. I'm like, when your kids are having trouble, getting out of bed in the morning and you want to get, I'm not saying that I didn't just yell at my kids for not getting in the car in time. I'm saying I'm writing, having just done that, trying to not do it tomorrow. You're constantly, the parent you want to be and you're never being that parent. But so it helps to remind yourself over and over and over again, not of where you're falling short, but what the ideal that you're aspiring towards.
I love it.
And that's what that is.
The most important job. Ryan, great to be with you.
Thank you very much. This is very cool.